Hello, my name is Daniel Yuck. Thank you for watching today. I appreciate you, your time, and your support. In today's video, I want to go over why packing isn't solid. If you are experiencing inconsistent packing, whether it's with color or black, this video will be for you. By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding as to some main reasons as to why you may be experiencing inconsistent packing. Should you have any questions at all, I encourage you to drop a comment down below. Rest assured, I'm going to do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring that bell for me, as I will be bringing more videos like this for you all. I do also have social medias under the same name as my YouTube. I have Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, all under Daniel Yuck. I would appreciate the support over there as well. With that being said, let's get right on into this video. Are you wanting to develop your tattooing skill sets? Now you can practice and develop anytime, any place with an assortment of tattooing workbooks that I've created. With these assorted tattooing workbooks, we can practice our basic lining all the way to advanced lining. We can practice shading, shading placement, dot work, textures, and more. All we are going to need is a tattoo workbook of mine. We can use a pencil, pen. We can even use a tattoo machine with a ballpoint cartridge to develop our tattooing abilities further. That means that we don't need tattoo ink, we don't need napkins or petroleum jelly to get to practicing. Simply open one of my tattooing workbooks and get going. It really is that easy. You can get your hands on one of my developmental tattooing assorted workbooks by simply clicking the links in my description or in the pinned comment section below, or navigating on over to Amazon.com, typing in Daniel Yuck, and you'll see all of the assorted tattoo workbooks that I've created come up. If you have an Amazon account, be sure to follow my Amazon author page as well, as I would greatly appreciate your support. Should you have any questions at all, drop them in the comment section down below. I will do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. With that being said, let's get right back into this video. I want to start by listing some of the main reasons why I've experienced inconsistent packing through my time, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to a different angle to demonstrate them in real time for you all. So some of the main reasons why I have experienced or seen inconsistent packing, again, whether it's with color or black, is going to be because hand speed may be too fast, voltage may be too low. We could either have inconsistent needle depth, inconsistent ink flow, incorrect needle stroke, or a multitude, maybe 3 or 4, or all of them, all of the above. Even if it's just one of these variables, and we are still going to get inconsistent packing. I feel like it's crucial to understand that even if one of these variables is not aligned, we are going to see it within our work. Let's say if we are moving too fast, we're going to see inconsistent, choppy results. Let's say if our voltage is too high and we're moving too slow, then we may be causing trauma to the skin. So you kind of get the idea. Let's say if we have inconsistent needle depth, then we're also going to see patchy results along the way. Even if it's over a larger surface area, then some areas are going to be darker over others, and when we get under a light, we're really going to be able to see that. Let's say, for example, if we're experiencing inconsistent ink flow along the way and all of our technical applications are correct, we're still not depositing any ink. So let's say, for example, if we're using a larger round mag to pack and only ink is getting to this side of the needle, well, we're only packing with this much of the needle while causing trauma over here for nothing. You get the idea. So these are some adversities that we can face when it comes to packing, again, whether it's color or black. It's important to note that this isn't by any means all of the reasons why packing may not be coming out solid. However, these are some of the top reasons why I've experienced inconsistent results when it comes to packing color or black. Another main reason why I've experienced inconsistent packing results, again, when it comes to color or black, isn't necessarily because of any of the other reasons listed, but more so because I wasn't comfortable with the gear that I was using. I remember early on, I would try to pack with, like, let's say, for example, a 3-round liner, not knowing how to use that small of a configuration. So when I would use color, I would experience a lot of pulling, and I wasn't really able to see where my needle tip was depositing ink. So then when I would wipe away, I would just have kind of like a bunch of patchy colors in tighter areas. So therefore I figured that it's probably best I went back to the chop block, learned how to use a 3-round liner fundamentally, and then come back to this approach later on to get better results. So that is another, not too common, but another reason why I did experience inconsistent results, simply because I wasn't comfortable with the gear that I was using. Here's a small needle assortment that I have in front of me that I want to use to get my points across here. So when I mentioned being comfortable with our gear, we have to know why we're picking the needles that we're using within each and every design that we are doing. Some designs are going to call for tighter needle groupings to pack in tighter areas, while others are going to call for larger needle groupings to shade and pack in other areas. You kind of get the idea with that. So when it comes to being comfortable with our gear, it's going to be subjective, and every artist is going to reach for a different needle for a different application. For example, let's say we have 2 designs that are the exact same and we give them to 2 different artists. The needles and ways that they go about applying that tattoo are going to vary on both of their ends, even if they're given the same gear. Chances of them using the gear identically are going to be slim to none. So being comfortable with the gear can also contribute to not getting consistent saturated results. Right here I have a 3-round liner. This is a 5. This is an 18-round shader, 14-round shader, 111-round shader. Here I have a GMK. I believe this is going to be a 15-round mag. And this one's going to be an ink claw. I believe this is going to be a 42, 39, or 45 mag. It's going to be somewhere in that area, but it is more on the larger end, as we can see. Once again, depending on the design that I'm going to be doing is going to determine which needle I'm going to be using. And before I reach for the needle, I want to have been sure that I'm comfortable with the needle that I'm reaching for, and I can anticipate the results that I'm going to get from each needle. So you can see, for example, here is an ink claw 111 round shader. Let's say if I get this needle and I start using it at an angle like this while I'm depositing ink into the skin, then I'm only going to deposit with this side of the needle, which is going to produce very inconsistent, choppy results. I have to know how to use the gear and be comfortable with it when I am reaching for it. Same rule of thumb applies to this, for example. Here is a larger mag, as you can see, and it's just a straight mag. Let's say if I get this mag and I don't have adequate ink flow and it's only, let's say, half the needle has ink. Let's say I go into the skin and I start depositing the ink. Well, only the side with the ink is going to get deposited, while the other side is just experiencing dry tattooing, and we could have essentially used those passes for more packing. So you get the idea. That is another main reason as to why we could be experiencing inconsistent, choppy results. That right there is why I feel being comfortable with the gear that we are using is super, super important. What I want to do now is I want to demonstrate not being comfortable with our gear. I want to demonstrate some improper techniques and variables that we may be experiencing to kind of better shed light on why we may be getting inconsistent packing results. Right here I have a Mast Pro standard 3-round liner. Right here is a Emalla Grand tattoo machine. I'm going to be showing some inaccurate demonstrations here. So right now I have my voltage setting to 4 volts even, and my needle depth is set to that far out there, and I have the multi-stroke set to 4.2. What I want to do is I want to demonstrate what not being comfortable with our gear looks like while demonstrating moving too fast while my voltage is too slow, so that way we can kind of anticipate those results and know what to stay away from. I'm just going to apply a little bit of moisture to the area that I'm going to begin tattooing, and then we're going to apply improper technique here. So let's say if I'm uncomfortable and I don't know how to pack with this small of a needle configuration, we have to keep in mind it does deposit in tremendously smaller increments than most other needles that we would typically use. So therefore we're going to have to compensate for that. Let's say we weren't aware of that fundamental and we just kind of start approaching it like this. You're going to see that my results, although I am getting some sort of saturation going on, these are not by any means consistent in any way, shape, or form. Allow me to zoom in and kind of show you here. So you can see these results still are tremendously inconsistent. This isn't how I would want my packing to look unless I'm going for this sort of look. So you can see that I'm moving too fast and my needle's not rounding about fast enough to deposit ink in a more saturated manner because of my hand speed. My hand's just way too fast to let my needle do anything productive. So you can see here, these are the results that we are getting. This is kind of more like a whip shade effect, but even at that, we're still getting very inconsistent pixels, even if I was going for a whip shade. Let's say if I'm trying to pack solid, then what I would do is typically like this. We would make round circular motions as we would with like a round mag, and then we would move. Now, thinking that it's a smaller needle, we would think that it's going to cause more damage easier, so therefore we would compensate by moving a little bit quicker. And we can see these are the results that we're getting. Again, although we are getting a certain level of saturation, there's not by any means any sort of consistency going on with this application, with this approach. This is a great way to get very inconsistent patchy results. Let's say if we're running at a higher voltage, let's take it up to maybe about 7 volts, and let's slow our hand speed down. This is a great way to cause trauma to the skin, especially with this sort of needle configuration. So let's say I'm running higher and I'm slowing my hand down this much. I'm doing tremendous damage to the skin, and tremendously more than I would have at a lower voltage here. And you can see it's kind of at a similar hand speed, maybe even a little bit slower than I did the other ones with. But it's damaging the skin. If this were human skin, it'd probably be painful for the client, and I wouldn't have as much time to work on this area of the skin just because of the amount of trauma that I'm causing in such a little amount of time. I feel that right there is a direct side effect from not being comfortable with the gear, not putting enough practice in and figuring out what settings are best for us as the artist. This right here is definitely how we don't want to approach it. Although we're getting saturation, this saturation shouldn't always be the only thing to consider. Our technical application and how we got to that level of saturation is what we should be considering. A better look here at these results, and you can see there's not by any means any sort of consistency. Although we did get saturation, along with the saturation we also got trauma. We may have caused blowouts and even scarring and textures to the skin should this have been applied on human skin. So these are some common adversities that we may be facing when we're not comfortable with the gear that we are using, or simply our fundamentals are not aligned and not there quite yet. Allow me to demonstrate with this GMK Blue Gem, if I'm correct. This is a 15 round mag right here. I want to demonstrate what moving too fast with a round mag looks like here. So I'm going to kind of approach it the same way. I'm going to demonstrate that improper technique, and I want to kind of shed light on the importance of having that hand speed and voltage variable down before we want to get clean, consistent results. So let's say, for example, I'm not familiar with the mechanics of how this round mag is going to be applying ink. What I'm going to typically do is think that I'm going to cause trauma as soon as the needle touches the skin, like so. I think that I have to kind of start moving. With this sort of logic and with this sort of approach, this is the way that I'm going to conduct myself. So I'm going to do this, thinking that I'm not causing any sort of trauma to the skin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe away like so, and then I'm going to look at it and realize that it's not saturated, and I'm going to kind of classify this as not going deep enough, or it's common phrase that I hear a lot, the skin's not taking the ink. That's not really what's happening. Most skins will accept ink just fine if it's deposited correctly. What's happening is we're not giving the needle enough time to do its job for the voltage that we are running at, or the needle depth in which we are applying is not accurate, and we're not familiar with that. So let's go ahead and demonstrate this again. So let's say if I did the exact same technique over here, you can see now my ink is inadequate as well. I'm kind of getting some patchiness going on there, which is also what I want to stay away from. Let's say if I thought that this is the way that we do it, let's say we need to cover this area right here. And then I'm going to repeat this over here on the next part, right? And then I'm going to start repeating this essentially throughout the entire area that needs to be packed. And you can kind of see why I'm starting to get inconsistent results. My needle depth is inaccurate. My hand speed and voltage is way off. So therefore, it's reflecting in the results that I'm getting here. And then I'm going to kind of keep doing this, even if I wanted to crosshatch this way. Let's say with that same technique, that same approach, kind of get in, get out. You can see, although it is getting more saturated, I'm getting very, very patchy and inconsistent results. I'm going to give you a better look here shortly. This right here is a direct side effect from, again, not knowing the fundamentals such as hand speed and voltage and needle depth. We have to align these variables when we are applying any sort of shading, whether it's with black or color, so that way we get clean saturated result. Now, let's say if I slow this down and I align my hand speed to the current voltage that I'm running, and let's say I focus on needle depth as well at trying to stay at the proper needle depth, that's going to look something like this. So you can see I have adequate ink flow. I'm matching my hand speed to my voltage. I'm moving in small circular motions while remaining at a consistent, healthy needle depth. This right here is how I would experience minimal trauma onto the skin and while getting full saturation almost the first time around. So you can see how I simply aligned all of the basic fundamentals and the results went through the roof there. Same thing, I'm going to move on over here. Align my hand speed to my voltage. My technique is to use round circular motions, using the side of the mag, as you can see, going this way, staying at a consistent needle depth while having good adequate ink flow. As you can see. And then I would repeat this throughout the design that required packing in that area. Let's say if you're not happy and you want to go over some areas, feel free to do so. You can go ahead and crosshatch, especially if you're accomplishing this level of saturation. You're probably only going to go over it maybe 2 times, 3 times, if that. And if you see that you're getting patchy results still, you can move your circular motions in smaller increments to cover even more ground, as you see me doing here, which proves that it does provide me with more saturation. I'm only using the very, very tips of my needles, applying minimal pressure as well. As you can see, I got full saturation there. Let me see if I can demonstrate inconsistent ink flow. You can see how if I'm depositing here, in this area, we had ink in this area, but the middle of the needle didn't have any ink to go around. So you can see right off the bat how that inadequacy with the ink flow affected the saturation. So allow me to demonstrate here. Let's say if my ink flow wasn't good, you can see that there's nothing coming out here. So therefore, we're kind of dry tattooing while getting very, very inconsistent patchy results. Ink flow has to be even throughout the entire needle in order for us to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with that needle. So you can see here we are. Although we're starting off good, you can see that the ink is starting to fade a little bit. And you can see now only a certain side, which was this side right here, was depositing ink, while the other side up there was not. And these are the results that we were left with. Although we were depositing with this side of the needle too, nothing got deposited over here in this area because of the inadequate ink flow. I can't really exhaust enough how important ink flow is. With ink flow specific, you can see your technical application and everything could be aligned, but if you don't have adequate ink flow, then you're not going to get clean, solid results. This right here, all of this area up until this side over here should have been applied solid saturated black. However, since I only had ink on this side of the needle, you can see that the needle only deposited the pigment more saturated and darker on that side, while the other side of the needle was kind of dry, depositing a lighter version of whatever ink it had available in there. So you can see this right here is a great example as to why good ink flow is important when we are trying to apply any sort of pigment, whether it's packing, lining, shading. We need good ink flow for a clean application. I want to talk about needle stroke settings. So I switched on the Emalla Grand down from the 4.2, which is a harder hit, which would be great for packing, down to a 2.4, which is more for like shading and smooth shading and really not so much packing. What I want to do is demonstrate how hard it can be to pack with inaccurate settings. So for example, a 2.4 stroke is again probably better off for like maybe smooth shading, if you're going to be using a lot of like light gray washes and stuff like that, or maybe realism, 2.4 may be great for that. However, if we're going to be packing, it may be a little bit more of an uphill battle. So using a 2.4 stroke setting, I could feel the difference off the bat. It's definitely not as hard, which means I'm going to have to work a little bit harder and a little bit slower to apply clean saturation. Now, I'm not saying that we can't do it with the 2.4 stroke setting, but what I am saying is that this 2.4 stroke setting may not be ideal to pack, especially if we're going to be doing a design that consists of a lot of packing. So you're going to see I'm going to cross hatch this way. Like so. Now, although those results aren't too bad, they are still a little bit patchy when I look up close. So let's say if I were to be stretching the skin, I'm going to notice a lot of inconsistencies. If I were using a 4.2, even a 3.9, I'm going to get a much harder hit, which is going to contribute to a better penetration of the skin, giving me a better saturated pack. Using an incorrect stroke setting for the application at hand could also be negatively impacting the results that we are trying to get. You always want to make sure that you're choosing the correct stroke settings and the correct machine for the design or application at hand, which is another reason why I feel we should always plan out our tattoos. But using this soft of a stroke hit is definitely a bit more challenging to get full saturation and not a patchy look. However, it is accomplishable, but I wouldn't want my workflow to be that uphill. Again, especially if I'm going to be doing a bigger design, even a sleeve, I would want it to be as smooth and easy as possible, and that is why I would use a more appropriate stroke setting. Let's talk about needle depth real quick. Let's say if we're not familiar with needle depth and kind of some fundamentals on how that works, then we're going to assume whatever we would assume and then work based off of that assumption. When it comes to needle depth, we do have to take practice to develop a sense of needle depth and what is right and wrong. However, if we have inaccurate needle depth, if we go too light, we're going to get inconsistent, sort of patchy, faded looking results. If we go too deep, we're going to get texture, scarring, and a lot of pain and trauma for the client. Allow me to show you what too soft of a, or too light of a needle depth would look like. So let's say someone's tattooing and this is the depth that they're working at, but their goal is to accomplish saturation. This is definitely not the technique or approach that we would want to use. I don't feel that we would achieve optimal saturation, especially over larger areas, with this sort of technique. So you can see my needle depth isn't getting deep enough to provide any sort of saturation. And my hand speed to voltage is moving too quickly for the needle to do any sort of consistent work. Allow me to wipe away to see the results, and you can see that right there, that is a sign of not being comfortable with needle depth or my hand speed and voltage. So you can kind of see we're still ending up almost at the same place, whether our hand speed and voltage is too fast, our needle depth is inaccurate, whether our ink flow is off. You get the idea. Whether we're not comfortable with the gear that we are using, we kind of still end up back at the same place, whether it's choppy, inconsistent, patchy results. We still end up there regardless. We have to align all of these fundamentals in unison together each and every time we commit to a packing. Going too deep for packing is pretty straightforward, but I'll demonstrate that here. So if we go too deep, you're going to also hear the changes. You're going to feel the changes as well. And it shouldn't be this aggressive. The process should never be this way. This is a great way to scar the client. This is a great way to get someone to not come back to you. So that is definitely inaccurate. You don't need to press down hard at all. All it needs to be is just find that dermis there and then make sure that you're using consistent motions that provides you with those sort of saturated results. There's not any necessary need for any sort of extra pressure or heavy pressure or anything like that. Being heavy-handed is not necessary within tattooing, I feel. It's the same thing. So here is a GMK 11 round liner. This pretty much applies to any single or any needle that we choose to use, whether we're packing with a round liner, a round shader, round mag, straight mag. It doesn't matter if our hand speed is too fast, if our voltage is too low, if we have inconsistent needle depth and ink flow, if we don't have correct needle stroke settings and we're not fully comfortable with the gear that we are using. If these are not aligned, I feel even if one of them is off, then our results are going to show as well. So for example, let's say if I'm moving too fast, again, you can see that we're going to get similar results to over here. It doesn't really change. The only thing that changed was the placement in which we are trying to pack and the needle size that we are using now. It's the only thing that changed, but you can see still moving too fast is going to provide me with very inconsistent results. And even moving too slow, although moving too slow can provide me with saturation, moving too slow is not only going to provide me with saturation, it's also going to provide me with textures, scarring, a lot of pain for the client, essentially less visits from this client moving too slow. This right here is way too slow for this needle size right here. Allow me to demonstrate what a healthy medium would look like using an 11 round liner to pack. Make sure that we have make sure that we have consistent, adequate ink. And then for me, once I start seeing a level of saturation, at the beginning I know how fast to move from there. And this right here is a healthy medium. You can see that my hand speed is matching my 4 volts. My needle depth is there. The client would be experiencing minimal pain for this application, although it may hurt because it's a tattoo. It's still going to be completely manageable. You want your tattoos to always be manageable in pain. And then I'm just going to keep at a steady, consistent pace. I want to make sure that that needle has enough time to deposit the pigment in a clean, saturated manner. And these are the fundamentals that we have to get familiar with. You can see that I did get smooth results. Let's say if I wasn't happy in certain areas, all I can do is I could even go back and just simply cross hatch if I wanted, just lightly over the surface of the skin, moving in full circular motions as you see me doing here. Or you can move in smaller circular motions like so. That's going to be up to you, whatever technique you prefer to use, but you get the idea. That right there is what I feel healthy saturation would look like, and the application to applying healthy saturation, I feel that's what it looks like. These are some very, very common reasons as to why we may not be experiencing consistent saturated results that we are seeking. Here is a top view at the results, and you can see that regardless of the approach, if our hand speed was too fast, you can still see we got patchy, inconsistent results. You can see that if our hand speed was too slow, we still got patchy, inconsistent results with trauma and scarring to the skin. You can see that these are clearly sunken in and dug into there. And you can see that if we had inadequate ink flow, how that deposits. So these are some common reasons as to why I experienced inaccurate packing. This is why I wasn't able to get solid, clean, saturated, consistent results when it came to packing, whether it was color or black. Didn't matter the needle size that I was using either. You can see that I kind of still ended up at the same place, whether it was scarring and textures or inconsistent patchiness. Either way, if my techniques were off and my fundamentals were not aligned, I kind of ended up at the same place, just with slightly different results. You can see these have more of a sort of pixelated look as I was using a round mag, where this one has more of a patchier look, where this one was done with a round shader, a round liner. So you can see that using different needles also does affect the results, but ultimately we still end up at the same place with patchiness and very inconsistent results. It doesn't matter if we're using a round liner, round mag, a round shader, you can kind of get the idea. A great way to work on and better these fundamentals would be to head on over to my Amazon author page. I do have an assortment of various tattooing workbooks that you can practice on paper. You can use a tattoo machine and a ballpoint pen cartridge to practice shading. You can practice lining. Once you feel more comfortable with shading and lining, you can take that up to the other workbooks that include designs. You can practice facial features with a new workbook that I've created. Just head on over to Amazon, type in Daniel Yuck, and you'll see a various assortment of different workbooks that pop up, and you can kind of pick the ones that are tailored to your wants and needs as you develop. But you can see right here, these are some clear symptoms of inaccurate understanding of tattooing, whether it was not a full understanding of needle depth, a misunderstanding of how hand speed and voltage work, being uncomfortable with the gear. All of that is going to play a role in the results that we receive when we apply any sort of tattoo, whether it's lining, packing, shading. We have to have our fundamentals down, and a great way to do that would be through my tattooing workbooks. Once you kind of get comfortable working on the workbooks and you have a good understanding and you're not ripping through the paper, I feel like that would be a good point to step on over into fake skin and start practicing with ink and needle, and then kind of work on that for a while until you get a good understanding of the fundamentals and master them. From fake skin, we can kind of go on over to human skin. So you can kind of see that we do have logical, fundamental building blocks that we are going to go through and can go through to get to a good, healthy spot within our tattooing career. These are the results right here. I feel like this would be a great place to conclude the video, and I do feel like I did get some points across as to why we may be experiencing inconsistent results when it comes to packing, whether it's color or black. Now, should you have any questions at all, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below. Rest assured, I'm going to do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. I will be making more videos on how we go about packing black and color later on, so be sure to stick around for that by hitting that subscribe button and ringing that bell for me. I do also have social medias under the same name as my YouTube. I have Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, all under Daniel Yuck. I would appreciate the support over there as well. With that being said, I appreciate your time and I thank you for watching. You have a great day. Are you needing or wanting tattoo guidance? What about 4K high quality step-by-step follow along tattoo sessions? Or maybe one-on-one tattoo support to get answers to your questions that are specifically tailored to your wants and needs as the artist? You can now become a Patreon where you will gain access to high quality 4K exclusive step-by-step follow along tattoo sessions. I will be tattooing with you in a one-on-one step-by-step manner where I will be explaining what I am doing and why every step of the way. I will also be doing this in a high quality 4K format for your optimal viewing experience. On top of the one-on-one support and on top of the step-by-step tattoo session guidance, you will also gain access to exclusive tattoo stencils that you can download and place on your end to further develop your skill sets. I will leave a link for you in the description or in the pinned comment section below, or you can head on over to patreon.com/Daniel Yuck. When you become a Patreon, you will be getting one-on-one support where you can ask me as many questions as you'd like that are specifically tailored to your wants and needs as the artist. You will gain access to exclusive tattoo stencils that you can download and practice on your end. You'll also gain access to exclusive high quality 4K footage where I walk you through each and every tattoo session in a one-on-one step-by-step manner where I explain all the what's and whys along the way. Become a Patreon today. Thank you for your support in advance. I greatly appreciate you.